The next speaker is Nicholas Kaler from Canada, and he'll be speaking on characterization of berry quality in Ribes nigrum in relation to harvest timing and cultivar.
I just need to take a moment to get my blood sugar up, because it's been a pretty intense afternoon. Quick show of hands, who has eaten a black currant before? Cool. Good to know. I asked that question to a lot of people, and in Canada, there's not a lot of people that have had the opportunity to eat black currants. All right, so hello. This is an international conference, so I'll take a stab at different languages. Bonjour, buongiorno, konnichiwa, ni hao ma. And that's all I got. So I'm going to be talking about the characterization of Ribes nigrum in relation to fruit maturity and genotype, a current topic. I love a bad pun. This is the outline of my presentation. I have an introduction, objectives. I'm going to go through my experiments, and then I'm just going to finish with my acknowledgements, and we'll have some questions. So, introduction. The common name is black currants. Family Grossulariaceae. Ribes is the species, and the genus is nigrum. So why have they become increasingly popular over the last decade? Well, they've attained this superfruit-like status because there's a growing base of scientific evidence that is showing that black currants have a high amount of antioxidants, which is shown to be a bit higher than a lot of commercial fruit that we have available to us. In addition to that, they have high vitamin A and a very high amount of vitamin C, and more potassium than bananas, gram for gram. So I listed some of the health benefits that have been associated with many of the compounds that have been shown in black currants. I'm not going to list them off, but they're there. You can ask them. You can ask me about them later on. And the main compounds in black currants that are responsible for these health benefits are the phenolic compounds. Okay, so the overall objective of my experiments were to determine the influence of fruit maturity and genotype on black currant berry quality. And I had two experiments that I'm talking about today. Experiment one is to determine the optimum harvest timing for Titania black currant. Experiment two is to determine which cultivar has optimum berry qualities. And this is just a figure showing that. So what berry quality characteristics of interest, what are they in regards to this experiment? And what are the methods I use to measure them? Well, for size, I use 100 berry weights. For titratable acidity, I used a micro auto titrator with NaOH. For total soluble solids, I used a Atago hand refractometer, which gave an output in bricks. I did two biochemical assays. Total antioxidant capacity using the ferric reducing ability of plasma, and the total phenolic content using the Follain-Siocalteur method. All right, so where were my trials? They were on PEI, Prince Edward Island, all the way east of Canada. Now, there's a lot of different trials going on, but the trials that pertain to this one are the harvest timings and cultivar trial A. So right there, there, and there. So experiment one is harvest timing, and my hypothesis stated that black currants harvested 10 days after 95% of the berries on the bush had turned fully black will have the highest berry quality compared to earlier timings. Just to explain this, if you look at this diagram at the bottom, the top row, the progression, is kind of akin to blueberries in that they have very little coloration and eventually reach a full color. But unlike blueberries, black currants reach that full color, but then they're not quite ready to eat. So the second line is quite ambiguous. If I'm a farmer and I'm trying to decide, are my black currants ready? It's very difficult. So the purpose of this experiment is really to map out that second line. So basically, I based my days off when 95% of the berries in the bush appeared that black color on the right side of the first line. So the cultivar I used for this was Titania. The harvest timings, I had 4 total, 3, 6, and 10 days after the 95% color change. And it was replicated 3 times at 2 sites. These were some of the results. Now, the result I found, which was super cool, was how the latest harvest timing on the 18 days had a significantly higher antioxidant capacity compared to the earlier timings. One surprising result, however, was the change in berry weight. Between the 6 and 10-day mark, we expected it to go up, but it didn't. This could have been attributed to an abnormal amount of precipitation that year, which caused a lot of berry drop and splitting. There was also a mildly significant total soluble solids increase over time as well. Experiment 2 was the cultivar trial. So the hypothesis was pretty straightforward. There will be significant differences in berry quality between Ribes nigrum cultivars. It was at one site. It was 7 different cultivars listed here and 2 harvest timings. And it was replicated 3 times at each harvest timing for each cultivar. And just to give you guys an idea of why we included harvest timing in our cultivar trial, all these photos were taken at the same time, so you can see that the berries progress in a not the same fashion, which is very inconvenient for farmers. So I'm trying to figure out when is the optimum time to harvest these black currants. So here are some of the results. In cultivar, we had a significant difference in size, where Whistler was much larger, even almost double of Ben Alder and Ben Tirrett. More results in terms of titratable acidity. So how acidic the berries were, there was a cultivar by timing effect. And we found that a lot of the early harvested cultivars here, especially the Whistler, had lower acidity, which is a little different than I thought. I thought that the acidity would decrease over time, but this was not the case for our trial. Well, it might have to do with the fact that we only had 2 harvest timings and we haven't allowed the cultivars to fully reach their range of progression, but we're further investigating this in the future. Experiment 2 results continued. So this was for total soluble solids. There was significant differences in the amount of soluble solids amongst cultivars. Once again, Whistler at the head of the pack. And a quick summary. So harvest timing can affect berry quality. Not to repeat myself, but antioxidant capacity was significantly higher on the currants that were harvested a bit later, but it was also observed at that time, the 18-day mark, that the berries were a little soft. So if you're machine harvesting, it might, I don't know, it's not a very scientific term, but it might smush the berries, which is not ideal if you're machine harvesting. Regardless, it's still pretty cool. My antioxidant capacity values that I got for the black currants were pretty high compared to other values. Like, for example, my values were 40 to 60 Trolox equivalents per gram fresh weight, whereas a similar trial on blueberries was about 20. So it's pretty significant. How interesting the black currant crop is, especially in the nutraceutical side of things. And moving on, cultivars can have significant differences in berry quality. And we noticed this by Brix with the Whistler, which had the highest average by far. And we saw significant differences in titratable acidity, which in conjunction with Brix, when you're talking about both those variables, it's a rough indicator of flavor, because flavor is a very important component when you're looking at cultivars, just like was previously mentioned. So by looking at these 2 different response variables, you can get an idea. So for example, if you have high Brix and low titratable acidity, most likely that fruit is going to taste a bit sweeter. We're going to be doing further analysis on this year. And also, last but not least, cultivars had significant difference in size. So when you look at variables like size, they can have big impacts on, for example, hand harvesting or a U-pick operation. If you want to put it in a U-pick farm, it might be a good idea to put in berries that are much larger because they're a lot easier to pick. And I just want to acknowledge the people that helped me with this research, especially the technicians that helped me with this. Because without the technicians, I was simply a grad student with a bunch of ideas. And that's about it. Thank you.
We have time for a question Yes?
Wasn't there a time when you couldn't, in our part of the world anyway, in Maine, you couldn't grow currants? It was illegal.
Ah, yes. Okay. It's a good question.
So a lot of us never had currants this way back because we couldn't get them.
Black currants are a alternative host to white pine blister rust, which made it less popular here in North America. In places like Europe and Japan, the fruit is a lot more popular, but here, it was outlawed, like you say, which really limited the amount of black currant production in North America.
But is that gone? Is that
Um,
you grow them now, do you know?
There's still, PEI is a hotbed for white pine blister rust. We've tried a lot of cultivars before this experiment. It's pretty easy to tell when your cultivar is white pine blister rust tolerant or not. Some of these cultivars here started showing some signs at the end of the growing season. We're going to look at this further next year, but it's definitely something we're aware of.
I believe that it's state by state in the United States, and even in some states county by county. And so you have to check locally to see what the regulations are. Some of those regulations are still in the books, but are being taken off by growers who are advocating for those laws to no longer be there. Yeah, one more question, Senator.
And the South Chilean conditions, blackberry plantations are very attractive to local weevils. They can destroy completely the plants. Do you have any experience on your Canadian conditions?
With weevil?
Regarding weevils?
I don't think we had that kind of insect pressure. I think the main insect that affects black currants is cane borer, but we didn't have much of that in our field trial.
Thanks, Nicholas.